Are you your brother's keeper? Well, we'll talk about whether we should be our brother's keeper on Talking with Henrietta, coming up next. Hi, I'm Henrietta. Welcome to the show. 2 years ago, President Obama launched an initiative called My Brother's Keeper. The initiative is designed to address persistent opportunity gaps faced by boys and young men of color and ensure that all young people can reach their full potential. When he launched the initiative, the president also issued a challenge called the MBK Challenge to cities, towns, counties, and tribes across the country to become MBK communities. In early April, the city of East Palo Alto held the My Brother's Keeper Local Action Plan Summit. On this show, I'll talk with several of the summit's participants to see why city officials and supporters are following up on the president's initiative and what they think the initiative will accomplish. Seated to my far left is the city's former mayor and current council member, Lisa Yarbrough-Gauthier. Seated beside her is Melvin, who has worked for the city of East Palo Alto for several years and now works in the city in its Economic and Development Division. Seated on my right is Gina Dalma, who works at the Silicon Valley Community Foundation as a special advisor to the President for Public Policy. And seated beside Dalma is Emily Pharr, who is the Community Program Manager with the City of East Palo Alto, a position she's held for 2 years. Well, thank you very much for joining me. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
So,
Thank you for having us.
are we our brother's keepers? Well, are we?
Yes, we
Absolutely.
I think we are.
Yes,
Why do you think that? It seems to be unanimous.
Yes. Yes.
Who's first?
Well, I believe that we are our brother's keepers, and I can just start out from the fact that when I was in Washington D.C. and had an opportunity to talk about this initiative, I felt like it was right for East Palo Alto, and so did the people in Washington D.C. as we approached as a city from East Palo Alto, and they being I met with at the time Dr. Nadine Garcia from the Minority Health. And at nearly every meeting that we were at, they wanted to make sure that East Palo Alto was at the table, and so that we can make difference for our young people within our community.
Well, Dr. Garcia, I know, has been out to East Palo Alto several times.
She has.
So, yes. So, Melvin, you said we're our brother's keepers. What do you think? So,
Absolutely, and I mean, at this table, we're somewhat a unique subset. We're in local government, either as politicians or administrators, and Gina's with a philanthropic organization, so we're all caring for people. But as far as being your brother's keeper, and with this initiative, it's really a matter of understanding that certain brothers have been left out and wanting to do something about that. And I think that's why we're really here as My Brother's Keeper, is to address those who've been facing opportunity gaps and try to reduce those gaps and get rid of them.
well, some people would say, why do they care? I mean, they can see themselves being their brother's keeper for their immediate family members, but other than that, people should be on their own, shouldn't they?
I would say that today we are not my brother's keeper, but I think we should be our brother's keeper. I don't think this community can survive. I don't think the future of our region, of our state, of our nation can survive if we don't become my brother's keeper. Our country, and more than anything, our state and our region is a minority-majority region, right? And if we do not ensure that we're closing the opportunity gap for kids of color, there is no, we will lose the vibrancy of and the creativity of our town, but even broader than that, right? Of our, I would say, of our region, again, our state and our nation. I think we should be our brother's keeper.
Emily.
For me, it's as simple as understanding the concept of collective responsibility. Gina, you mentioned that, at this point it seems that we aren't, but I remember a time, maybe towards, many years ago, when everyone was responsible for your child. Everybody made sure I got home safe from school. And, you went out to play after school, or you went to school, or you got in trouble at school. You heard, your mother knew about it by the time you got home, because the village was raising you. It was never on your own. I was raised not only by my grandmother and grandfather, but I had my mother, my aunts, my uncles, the folks down the street, and everyone in between to get to and from that door. And I was expected to make it and to make it back. And when you think about what we've done, is we've moved away from it. We are a society, no society has ever survived without understanding the concept of collective responsibility. Everybody has a job to do, and we all have to make it.
Well, I can imagine that some would say times have changed. And it's enough for us to take care of our own immediate families. How are we expected to be our brother's keeper? And what does that really mean in terms of the initiative? What does it mean to be our brother's keeper?
So, and I can go over the initiative, the 6 steps that are covered under the initiatives, which makes it possible. Number 1 is making sure our kids are entering school ready to learn. 2, that they're reading at 3rd grade level by the 3rd grade. Because statistics show, and we know that our kids are learning to read from preschool to 3rd grade, but from 3rd grade on, the things that they're reading, they have to know how to read, and so that they can comprehend and get the message. We want to make sure that our kids are graduating from high school. Number 4 would be that they're going to college and graduating from college. When they come back from college, that they have jobs. And then the 6th part would be to make sure that we're decreasing the violence and giving kids a second chance.
You've memorized them. I have them listed here.
This initiative is very important.
And you did a great job. But I would think everything on it takes money. And where is the money going to come from?
So I think that the biggest strength of this initiative is that it's not about the money, right? The biggest strength of this initiative is doing better with what we have, doing more with what we have. I think the courage of the city of East Palo Alto is really the vision of this collective effort that Emily was talking about. And there's organizations that are doing phenomenal work in East Palo Alto, but they're not talking to each other, nor are they talking to the city. Right. This is an effort to do well by our kids. It's taking first of all, it's acknowledging what to me is incredibly important, that we have created an environment that doesn't allow our kids to thrive. And that we have to change the conversation to say, how do we build together with what we have an environment where they will be expected to thrive?
Wouldn't you think that would be in place anyway, already? Wouldn't you think that the schools would be concerned about children developing physically, socially, and be emotionally ready? Wouldn't you think they would be concerned about children reading by the 3rd grade, or everybody graduating from high school?
I don't think that we're saying that they're not. We're saying that we can do better than what we're doing. We're saying that when we have goals in place that aren't 100% success, that we strive for less than par. We need to bring par to 100%. And so I don't want to promote that they're not concerned. I just think that, as Gina has pointed out, that we need to reevaluate what we're doing with what we have so that we get better outcomes.
And if I may add, beyond the concern in which you think people are, obviously educators and politicians and all the different gamut of folks are interested in seeing youth develop and seeing youth be safe from violent crime and receiving second chances. But the reality is we failed. There are a lot of youth who aren't reading at grade level by the 3rd grade. There are a lot of youth who aren't safe from violent crime. And when you look at what those youth look like, it's often youth from East Palo Alto, from communities like East Palo Alto, youth who are of color, youth who are immigrants. So yes, people are interested in seeing youth do well, but we failed, and we've ultimately failed certain populations more so than others.
The president asked communities to take up the community challenge. And I think you have led the way, Councilmember Gauthier, for the city of East Palo Alto.
It's been a
How did the
concern.
city get involved in committing to that challenge?
It's been a group effort, a collective effort from the council. But I was at a meeting for the U.S. Conference of Mayors meeting when I was first, when I first saw this initiative. And then on our visit, mayor, vice mayor visit to Washington, D.C., like I said, during several of the meetings, we had this conversation, and we were invited. East Palo Alto was invited. And it was a much stronger invitation when we made it to the White House meeting, where they really knew our numbers in East Palo Alto and what bringing East Palo Alto to the table under this My Brother's Keeper, what it could not only do for East Palo Alto, but what it would mean for the nation, for communities such as East Palo Alto. So we brought it back to the council, and the council agreed to the initiative, and staff has been working very diligently. So as a collective of staff and council in East Palo Alto, we've identified this as an important initiative for our young people, because our young people are our future.
Can I add to your comments?
Sure.
Of
Councilmember?
course.
It's important to know that when City Council adopted this measure and this initiative to move forward, that while the initiative is called My Brother's Keeper, East Palo Alto is not excluding girls. We are absolutely including
Definitely.
girls and young women of color as well. They have similar issues, the same issues, and then issues unique to their gender, but they are impacted by this lack of in these gaps area, in the 6 initiative areas, there are gaps for each group. and
We
don't
have
wanna leave them out.
photos. We can't see them in the studio, but maybe the audience can see them when the crew can get them ready of President Obama, and he's meeting with some of the young people that we're talking about. And it just so happens in the pictures, they're all young men. And it's interesting that you said that young women are not excluded. And yet the focus does seem to be on young men of color. Is that true?
The focus, I believe, from the White House was to focus on the young men. And I believe Councilman Romero touched on the fact that when Trayvon Martin was killed, the president said that looking at that picture, that Trayvon Martin could have been his son. And the fact that we were losing some of our young people to these tragic crimes, it was important to him to make sure that our young men had an opportunity. Now, I know when I've sat at the table, even with the White House, I bring up the fact that our young girls face some of the similar challenges, and we don't want to leave our young girls out of the picture. But when the president signed the initiative, you will see young men in his background, because that was his focus. More of our young men are going to prisons, and the young women are too, but there are a lot of our young men that end up in prison, and we want to change that, and we want to give our young people an opportunity to succeed. And so this initiative is designed to do just that.
Yes.
Oh,
Melvin.
just to add to what Councilmember Gauthier said, from the federal standpoint, you're looking at the data, and the largest opportunity gaps exist among young men of color. President Obama and the MBK initiative also realized that this wasn't going to be a federal government-led initiative, and for the issues to really be addressed, it was going to take local people handling the matters, and it was going to take, in addition to local politicians, local business people, local educators, etc. But he also gave every local community that accepted the challenge the freedom to shape it as they saw fit, to really make the MBK initiative address the issues that their communities are facing. And as Emily and Councilwoman Gauthier said, in East Palo Alto, the young men and young women both face opportunity gaps. So that's why
No.
we're focusing on them all.
I've mentioned that in my intro, and you've mentioned it twice, opportunity gaps. What are we talking about? What are the challenges we're talking about? What are the opportunity gaps?
So Councilmember Gauthier reviewed the 6 initiative areas, and so when we did a text poll survey, we discovered that there were 3 points that the community that attended this summit really believe are the 3 areas, the strongest areas where there's the biggest opportunity for improvement um, and to get the best results in terms of improving our outcomes. And what was very compelling about that is that it was at the beginning, getting children off to their best start, giving them their best chance by giving them a good, sound start, making sure that they cross that finish line in high school, and then if they don't, making sure that we go back, we forgive them, we give them a new set of tools, and then get them through, meaning that second chance, so that we don't just give up on them. And what I think is compelling about that is that when you think about raising children, and I think all of us have either been, we've all been raised or have raised children or are in the process of raising children, that's exactly what you do. It's very basic. When we started this conversation here with you, we talked about that. Are we responsible for each other? Well, yes, we are. And it's very basic. It goes back to a time before that I remember, and that anyone that's before me should remember as well, that it's very simple. You just raise them well and give them what they need to get going.
Yes, now that brings up several different questions for me. One of them is, you all say we're responsible, but where does that responsibility begin and
Day
where
one.
does it end?
Day one.
I know there's this idea from cradle to grave, but what share do each of us have in terms of responsibility, and how do we exercise that responsibility? But maybe what I'll leave that question hanging for the moment and turn to you, Gina. How is the foundation involved?
Well, first of all, we are incredibly proud to be involved. And the Silicon Valley Community Foundation has helped is helping or supporting, partnering with other cities in the region to work on My Brother's Keeper initiative, including the city of San Jose. And we are involved in terms of really working with the city of East Palo Alto, ensuring that the initiative follows the vision of the leaders and the community. We have funded the work that has happened so far, which includes an asset mapping of the community. It includes a survey that was launched to really understand. You were mentioning opportunity gap, right? What does that entail? And where we are right now is that we have the data, we have the action summit that you mentioned, and Councilwoman Gauthier mentioned at the beginning. So with that information, we are going to develop together with the city the plan going forward, and we've supported this financially, and as well as just partnering with the city of East Palo Alto to achieve the vision of the city's leaders.
Can I just answer the opportunity gap question as well?
Sure.
Because I think when we talk about the opportunity gap, we are in Silicon Valley. Well, diversity is an issue when we come to these tech jobs. We want to make sure that our young people have an opportunity. And in order to have an opportunity, they need to have the education. Many times when you look at the Googles and Facebooks, they want people with degrees. Not only degrees, but Ivy League degrees. And if our children aren't graduating from high school, then they're not positioned to take those jobs. And we want them to be able to compete in our industry. So those are some of the opportunity gaps that we are referring to when we talk about opportunity gaps.
And I'll add to that as well. If you go down your list of the 6 goals or milestones of the MBK initiative, and you see a goal like ensuring that all children enter school cognitively well and physically, socially prepared and ready to learn, we fall short in East Palo Alto. Mm-hmm. If you look at a safe community, we fall short in East Palo Alto. I was raised in East Palo Alto, and looking at my peers and folks who I grew up with, I have a few who have gone on to college and have jobs and live productive lives. I have a few who are in University of San Quentin. I have a few who are deceased. And I have others who are struggling to make ends meet because they didn't graduate from high school. I also grew up in the community of Palo Alto. and my peers there are doing much better than my peers in East Palo Alto. Separated by a creek, but two different worlds.
And a highway.
And no, we got the west side as well. It's the creek, but the highway also further down. But it's so strange to see the different worlds that you're in when you're a stone's throw away.
The thing about it is these gaps, the so-called opportunity gaps, have always existed. There has always been a difference in two worlds.
But they don't have to. They don't have to.
Yes, and what I'm thinking is, why has it taken a My Brother's Keeper initiative? What has that done in terms of minority youth falling behind? They've always been behind for the most part in our inner cities. Is it that people didn't care enough then to do anything about it?
I won't say that people didn't care enough, because there have been initiatives that have come forward. In Ohio, I believe they had the Cradle to Career initiative. I think My Brother's Keeper is different, because at this point you have the President of the United States saying that I am supporting this and I want to make a difference. And not only that, it's been said that once he leaves the office, this will be something that he will focus on. So to have somebody who's leading the nation to say that this is initiative, this is important, enough is enough, I want to make a difference. I think, and the fact that he's saying to each city, you don't have to do your own thing. This is a collection. I'm able to sit on phone calls with the White House and listen to other people from other cities who are working on the very same issue. So it's not an isolated solution, it's a collective solution. Regionally, we sit down together to kind of figure out what's going on in San Jose that works in San Jose that we can focus on in East Palo Alto, and vice versa. So I think at this point, having the president say he's on board, and then we've had some of the hip hop stars, that are saying, My Brother's Keeper is important, and I'm going to be on the bandwagon. Common, for one, has just come out and is very supportive of it, and some of the others. So it has a better opportunity.
And let me just add, and I can say this because I'm the one sitting at the table that does not work for the city or is an elected official of the city. I think it took the leadership of Lisa as well as other folks to say, the first thing we're going to do is we're courageously going to look at what the city is doing for our kids that is working and what is not working. And we're going to have serious conversations based on data, and going to seriously make sure that we're using the data to drive action. And I think that's fresh. I think that's courageous, and I think that's why this is going to work.
Well, I think, Emily, you had mentioned that you or Councilmember Gauthier, the cities can tailor it to their own needs.
Yes.
For example, including girls.
Yeah.
So when you look at the local action plan, the summit, how was it developed, and what are the unique things about East Palo Alto that went into it that you're focusing
Gina
on?
mentioned that the Silicon Valley Community Foundation is our primary funder, and what they have funded thus far was to get to the process was our asset mapping. So we took a look at what resources do we have, where are we, who do we have, what are we doing, and from there we culled that data, put it together, synthesized it, and we invited our community groups, our leaders, those that are just interested, to come to the table to take a look at this, take a look at these numbers. This is what we have. And with all of this, as Gina mentioned, how can we do better?
So can we take a look? I know you probably don't have the data in front of you, but you might remember some of what's on the asset mapping, just so we can...
Yes.
We have some.
We actually have the data in front of us.
Okay, so if we can go through a little of it, just to talk concretely of what it is you examined.
So
and
when you look at community trends around entering school ready to learn, in 2014, 51% of youth ages 3 to 4 were enrolled in nursery or preschool.
51%.
51%. So that means 49% are not.
And we're talking East Palo Alto.
Yeah.
All these are data specific for East
Okay,
Palo
so
Alto.
51% are ready for preschool,
Yes.
and 49%, almost half, are not.
Between 2010 and 2011, there was a substantial rise in the number of youth in nursery and preschool, and this percentage stayed fairly consistent in recent years. However, if you, when you look at these numbers, I mean, we mentioned this earlier, I think, before we began taping, is that to have 51%, when we know that I mean, we know that the ability to finish high school and the likelihood of finishing high school and being successful in your learning starts with an early learning experience. So if we've, I mean, 51% is half. That means half get a decent chance, and the other half
No,
don't.
so what does that mean when you say 51% are ready for preschool? How do you measure the other 49%? Now, they could be at home
Well,
being taught by their parents.
I think the next thing you would look at is the reading at third grade level numbers. And for all students in East Palo Alto in the year 2013, I think we had 26% that were reading at third grade level.
Yeah.
How do you explain that?
And you know that you have to, before third grade, you learn how to read, and after third grade, you read to learn. So after, if you're not reading at grade level in third grade, there's a very slim chance that you're going to be able to be ready for high school and then graduate college or career ready. So,
And,
right?
and we
So-
know the statistics. If children aren't reading by third grade, they're more apt to be in prison later on. But how do you explain the fact that only 26% of the children who are mandated to be in school at 5 years old, right,
Right.
aren't reading by the third
It's
grade? Is that
unacceptable.
the fault of the education system?
It's an unacceptable number.
And I think it's the educational system, and then, you know, it's parents. You have these parents who probably are working really hard, working 2 and 3 jobs, and can't necessarily be home all the time. And, you know, families may not be reading at home as often as they should. And that's when it comes back to, am I my brother's keeper? What can I do to help with this process?
So what's a part of the action plan? Is there something that came out of the action plan to deal with this specifically?
So the next step, after having had the summit and engaged in really rich discussion and sort of assessed what are those priority areas and trying to figure, that's what the poll that I mentioned earlier was about. The next step is to go to sort of to pull this data with those conversations into one place and develop a draft plan that will then be represented to the community for evaluation and retweaking, and then hopefully sent on to City Council for adoption. And then
We don't have a plan yet.
We don't have a plan.
We have looked at the data and brought in various stakeholders to the local action summit and discussed the data and further discussed what people are doing already that may or may not address the issues, whatever those may be, and what can be done better. And from there, and we'll dive through that conversation notes and dive through the data and develop the plan.
Let's go through something else in the asset mapping that you found out that characterizes.
I'm prepared for one other one, and that's the high school graduation rate. When you look at the district, they're saying that 63% of our students are graduating from high school, but from East Palo Alto, the number is at 32%.
So when you talk about looking at the district, what district are you talking about?
That would be, I think, did that encompass Sequoia and, yes,
32% of
East Palo Alto.
Sequoia Union School District students from East Palo Alto graduate high school.
Yeah, yes.
Less than 1/3.
And how do you explain that? Is it that they were expelled? Is it that they dropped out? Is it
some have been expelled, some have dropped out, some have never made it. Some, you know, showed up on the first day of 9th grade and we haven't seen them since. Some have to go to work to help their families. Some, you know, there's a whole plethora of societal ills that can challenge that. But if you look at, again, the data sets, how many of those young people didn't have a fair start in the first place? You can't win the race if you didn't even get a good start.
well, then even if you didn't get a good start, you're still in the race. And we can't go back to give them a good start.
Well,
so
yes,
what
we
can
can.
be done?
Yes, we can.
What
That's-
can be done where they are?
Right.
Yeah. But
Can't give them a good start, but you can make up
we-
for
yeah, we-
the
that's what,
How can you do
Stagnant.
that? What do you all have in mind? You know who the kids are, right? You're talking about reaching them directly.
Yeah.
And what might be some conceivable action steps?
restorative justice, for example.
Now, does that assume that they're in juvenile court?
In that case, it probably would assume that. it may assume that we give them a different set of opportunities to complete high school. Maybe it's not a traditional school setting. Maybe it's a GED program. Maybe it's a independent learning program. Maybe it's a work study opportunity. There's a lot of creative ideas, and there are people out there doing this good work, but we need to make sure that we don't leave not one child.
And that was part of why this starts with an asset map, right? And these are assets in the community. These are programs that already exist in the community. We need to make sure that they work towards the vision of success for every kid. But we use the assets in the community then in an action plan through collaboration, to hand-holding. We need to make sure that if a kid is not reading by 3rd grade, that there's a program maybe after school, maybe in school, that really addresses the fact then. And then when the kid is ready to go to the next step, then there's collaboration with another nonprofit, with the school, et cetera, with the environment. Again, the opportunity of this initiative is that it's not a Band-Aid. It's really looking at the assets that exist, what works, what doesn't, how do we create an environment that is efficient and effective for every single kid.
What's very interesting, we talked about the asset map, and then we immediately went into a discussion of the deficiencies, what the problems were. So all of a sudden it occurred to me, we're talking about assets that the community has,
Yes.
and you mentioned an asset. So let's talk about the assets. What's considered an asset?
So, and that's the thing. We do, as East Palo Alto is very rich in nonprofits that are addressing some of these very issues, but as Gina has indicated or alluded to, we want to make sure that these nonprofits are talking. I can just give one example of the SWAG program, because that's a program that I'm involved in, and that's where they're taking the kids that are either at Redwood continuation, 5th year seniors that don't look like they're going to graduate, and giving them mentorships and helping them with credit recovery so that they can get on track and graduate from high school on time.
Could you talk about what SWAG stands for?
SWAG is Students Who Achieve Greatness.
Students with
amazing goals. Is that what it is? Students with amazing goals. I always change it. But it's a program, and it's a collaboration between the city and the county that's working together, and they are in the juvenile system, and they're doing some things to try to change those outcomes. And to give you an example of a young lady, a student by the name of Linda. When I met Linda and she was in the school, she's a senior and was very credit deficient. We had a conversation. She's enrolled in the SWAG program, and after last year or something, the last time I ran into Linda, first she said that in her family there wasn't an expectation that she would graduate from high school. School wasn't the important thing in her home. It was more important for her to have a job. But when I ran into Linda again, she was able to do the credit recovery. She's on track to graduate, and she says she wants to be a nurse.
How do you, I'm just thinking logically, say that school is not important, what's important is for her to have a job, when what's necessary for a good job is school, the education?
So when it comes back to families and the way that some children have to stay home to take care of their siblings. It's just the way the families are structured. So for her, the expectation within her family was never there that she would graduate from high school. And she may be the first to graduate from high school within her family. But now the expectation is there that she will graduate from high school. And I think the solution is for our children in East Palo Alto is to set the expectation that you will graduate from high school
Melvin,
and go on.
were you thinking of something?
There are people from all different walks of life in our community, and people who have, like I know people whose parents are landscapers, and they've got a 3rd grade education, but they make ends meet that way. So if it comes down to rent being paid and my child coming to work with me in my landscaping business, or my child going to school, I may make that decision that I need the extra hands landscaping. I think that's a reality in our community. Oftentimes when you're not kind of entrenched in that, it's absurd to see that people think that way, but in reality, people try to make ends meet, and sometimes that's not working. That's staying home with your child, or having the oldest child stay home and take care of the children, because childcare costs $1,000 a month, and I only make $1,500 a month. So how can I go to work and pay for childcare and pay for my $2,000 rent. I mean, people are trying to make ends meet. So, as we say, these are the gaps that let's say opportunity gaps that folks are facing that we are trying to ensure that different stakeholders are aware of and actively working to address those gaps collectively. We've also noticed that, like Councilwoman Gauthier said, East Palo Alto has a wealth of resources, but often people operate on islands and they're not communicating with each other when in fact, if they communicated, they'd understand that the programs they have would probably be enhanced if they were working together. So that, I mean, this isn't the My Brother's Keeper initiative isn't the first time that kind of collaboration has been discussed in East Palo Alto, but it's a bit of a recharge and a slightly different model.
Well, it sounds like the letters for swag in terms of amazing goals. It's an amazing goal. What's the next step? And I think it's easy to get started on something. It's easy to visualize it and have an impetus for it. And it's so much harder to keep it going. So what's the next step? You had the Action Summit. You'll be, collecting the feedback that came back. When do you think that'll be done?
We're pushing to have the draft local action plan by June. So it will be a draft and being able to present it to the community for review. So it's not, one of the things that I liked about the President's Challenge is the expectation that you get it done, that you not lollygag about the process, that you move it along. There are definite timelines that they have set and expect for us to try to achieve what we're doing. It's not about being hasty, but it's about being diligent so that you're focused and, you know, we're looking at what we already have. So there's not like we have to go discover a whole lot of new things. So.
Well, this isn't going to be a one-time thing.
No.
I mean, I think this is over the course of a lifetime. It's something that's going to be continuing. It's something that's going to be ongoing. And when you put the plan into effect, what would that mean? Do you have any idea? You haven't drafted it yet, but.
I think it's really crucial that whatever we do, that it be sustainable.
Yes.
And that means that it not be reliant upon a single leader. That means that it not be reliant upon a particular funding source, but it really be a vision that different stakeholders in East Palo Alto collectively agree upon and agree to keep coming back to the table and setting goals and working toward achieving those goals, and, you know, every now and then coming back and evaluating the progress and tweaking things where needed. But again, it really has to be something that all the stakeholders agree upon, and it can't be Councilwoman Gauthier as the leader because she may not be in politics forever, or maybe she'll move to another area and be in politics as the governor or something.
Oh!
But the point is, it can't rest on any one particular person, and it can't go away. In my history in East Palo Alto, I've seen a lot of good programs that have run their course and gone away because funding dried up or the leader moved away. And I know, as this is in its infancy stages, we have to plan to not allow that to happen.
Well, you all are inspired, but since it's not going to be dependent upon one person, it seems it's going to take a constant inspiring of the group. You know, like in any organization, it's usually a few people who keep going out there and out there and out there. And so I'm sure somehow in the plan it will be built in so that it's sustainable, that there will be those who will keep it going.
Well, it's also about what could be more inspiring than the future of our youth? What else is there? I mean, I remember when I was considered the youth, and now here I am at the table with Henrietta talking about it. So I'm excited about those that are coming behind me, and I have an absolute responsibility in my capacity as a city, you know, part of the city's administration to facilitate that. And so not only what this plan will do is give us that roadmap and that infrastructure to move forward. And yes, all of those built-in check stops and you know, re-energizing place stops will be built into that. But that roadmap is there for us to guide us how, policy decisions might be made, how resources may be allocated or reallocated, because we'll understand what the needs are. We'll have a fresh idea of what the needs are.
So, do you know you hit on something, and we're all sitting here around the table, the four of you sitting talking with me, because this is what's important to you. You see it as a priority. You ask what's more important than our youth. And I could think of 100 other things that some people might say, like taking that vacation next year, and so I think it's very inspiring, the goal, and how you keep other people at it, thinking on a community, a collaborative, a collective consciousness.
When we think about those tech industries, those tech businesses that Councilmember Gauthier mentioned, the only way those businesses will continue to thrive is by a turnover in talent. And the youth present that opportunity to build talent in the future. It's an investment that's worth everyone's time and effort, and everyone has something to benefit from it. And so, yeah, I'm definitely thinking about vacation and those sorts of things too. But I'm also thinking about I'll be on vacation when I get there. In the meantime, this is the work that I need to be focused on.
Is there personal sacrifice? It's said that people don't really feel it unless they have to pay some type of a price. Is there any personal sacrifice that you're asking people to make?
We have to live with this. We have to live with the numbers that we're seeing of our youth. That is, there's some frustration there. We can't allow this to happen. We have to live with these numbers. So action is our only way to be able to live with these numbers, right?
It's taking that, you can't be a hypocrite. If we have numbers where only 32% of our youth are graduating from high school, and then complain that, oh, they're on welfare, or oh, they've become criminals, or oh, they don't have a job.
And it's their own fault.
And it's their own fault. It's like that doesn't work.
I mean, they're the ones out in the street killing each other. They're the ones who decided to put drugs in their veins. That's what people would say, that they have a personal responsibility.
And so my question would be, how did they get access to the drugs?
Yeah. And that could be
because they've not been outside of the community.
Because somebody decided to sell it.
Well, I can just say, Henrietta, as a mother of 3 young people, I knew that in order for me to make sure that my children were successful, I had to make an investment because they're my future. I needed to make sure that they were on the right track and they would be able to take care of themselves when I'm no longer here. And I have done that. And I'm proud to say, I keep saying everywhere I go, my youngest daughter will be graduating from USC with a degree, her master's degree in psychology on May 13th of this year. She grew up in East Palo Alto. Melvin has 2 master's degrees. He's from East Palo Alto. But somebody took the time to invest in them. I have invested in my children. We need to continue to invest in our children so that they have an opportunity to be successful.
Yeah. I mean, I have a 5-year-old, and she got a perfect score on her very first spelling test. And she will be reading at grade level by 3rd grade. If I don't give her her best chance, if I don't give the kid next to her, I went into her class this morning, and they were struggling with their spelling words, and I took a few extra minutes, late to work or not, to help them and help the instructor make sure that all the kids at the blue table, where she sits, were finishing their words. And erasing, no, your S is backwards. You have to take the time to get it right. If my daughter's friend fails, then my daughter fails in some way. She's as great as the peer's wings that can help her fly as well.
Henrietta, you mentioned that there are often going to be people who would say contrary to a comment that we are our brother's keeper, or that it's our responsibility to take care of a young person, even if that young person is not related to me. And if that young person makes a decision that causes them to become incarcerated or strung out on jail, that's that person's fault. There are plenty of people who would say those things. You're right.
Yes.
But there are also plenty of people who think contrarily and might want to look at how that young person got to that and consider that, oh, there may be a lot of different factors that influence that person's decision. And maybe if we would have done something about their reading level when they were in 3rd grade, they wouldn't be in jail. Maybe. I'm not saying that there's a definite correlation. I'm just saying maybe. I think what we're doing with the MBK initiative in East Palo Alto is taking those people who are already trying to do something about those opportunity gaps and just collectively come together and enhance what we're doing. The naysayers, they're still going to be naysayers, but we have different stakeholders at the table. We have local governments who are funded by the naysayers' tax dollars. We have philanthropic organizations. We have nonprofit organizations. So those of us who are with the movement, the initiative, we're going to keep working toward it. And those who feel otherwise,
They're welcome to
we
sit
won't
on the
really
line.
worry about those folks.
You mentioned milestones, Emily. Can you give some of the milestones that the initiative sets up?
So,
Did you say that the initiative, there were certain built-in milestones that cities?
well, so the president's initiative has a timeline in terms of, so that's why we put the first summit together, and then,
What's the timeline? Go through some
Gina,
of
can you
that.
help me with that?
Yes. So the first big milestone. Well, the first one was accepting the challenge, which I believe was in October 2015.
Yes.
And the second one was community input and the surveying, et cetera, the study, the asset mapping, the laying the groundwork, which was completed during our action summit last Friday. The next step is again taking this information, gathering community input, and developing an action plan, which is a strategic plan to move forward. It will first be presented as a draft, and then the community will be able to respond, and we'll have a final strategic implementation plan of the initiative, let's say. And this should take, the whole process has taken between 6 and 8 months. So would this be completed? We'll have a final plan maybe the end of third quarter, beginning of fourth quarter of this year.
That would be the goal. That is
That would
the
be the
goal
goal.
to
That's the goal.
shoot for.
The president started his initiative in 2014, 2 years ago. Are there any cities who might have gone beyond the action plan, who are further along?
Yes.
Yes, in both in our community, in our region, state, and rest of the nation. Again, the Community Foundation is also supporting the city of San Jose. Our colleagues are supporting Richmond, Oakland, San Francisco, and I believe those are the 5 cities in the Bay Area that have accepted the challenge.
Has any of them
Gone a little bit further. Yes. So I would say the city of San Jose is maybe 6 months ahead. And the great thing about that is that we get to learn from the mistakes that happened then and then not make those same mistakes again. The city of San Francisco might be a couple of months ahead, as is the city of Oakland.
And so we're talking about cities, the whole city, working together. Oh,
So
well,
I was also going to say the city of Philadelphia, Mayor Netter out of Philadelphia already has their action plan and they're already working towards it. Birmingham is really working toward it. They've come out ahead of us. Boston is working on My Brother's Keeper. There are so many cities that are really working on it. But again, the cities on the East Coast have probably had been at the table a little longer than we have. So I've been able to see some of their action plans put together, and they're working on the initiatives and they're making some progress.
now it's not fair for me to include something that's not included here.
That's okay.
But you talked about restorative justice, and and we talked about, if you're not reading by 3rd grade, that the chances of being incarcerated. Does this program deal at all? It's not one of the 6 points about those who are incarcerated or who have been incarcerated and who are coming back to their communities, and what can be done to address their issues so that they're not involved in a revolving door in prison.
It does. It's not one of the 6 goals or milestones, but it is tied in with the 6th milestone, ensuring all youth are safe from violence. we've extended that to keeping youth safe from violence and ensuring that those who need it get a second chance. So formerly incarcerated folks, we want to make sure we wrap around those folks and get them the services that they need to reintegrate into the community. That was actually the breakout session that I got to facilitate at the local action summit. So reentry is a huge issue in the community of East Palo Alto, and it's definitely something that's part of this initiative.
When can we expect to see not some action, but some results?
I love that.
I think we're building on what already exists. I'd say that you can already see some results in the community of East Palo Alto on a lot of these areas, but obviously you want to see more results and better results. So in my opinion, I think we should be looking at our progress biannually. Like once we put forth an action plan, we should be coming back to say 6 months later, well, where are we at? Have we moved that
You
needle?
said that there are a lot of results that we can see now, and that's not coming from the challenge. But talk about some of those results.
So
I can help. So if you look at College Track, who are taking, that's a nonprofit that's within East Palo Alto. They're taking some of the kids that are first time going to college and making sure that they're making a difference. Building Future Now, that's an organization that you're familiar with, that's working with our young people. We have some organizations that are in place. The Boys and Girls Club, they're working with kids and making sure that they stay on track and go to college and work with them through the college process. So that's when we talk about our resources. There are resources within East Palo Alto that are working, but they're not always talking together. So how do we build on those things that are going well? Also, we had the principal of Eastside at the table during our Action Summit. That's cool. I think what's the percentage of high school graduates and college graduates?
It's in the 90s.
It's in the 90s. So like, what can we learn from Eastside to make sure that, what are they doing right that we can do with our other children to make sure that they're getting the same opportunities?
You can look at something like that, but you still have to be able to incorporate it into the system.
Right.
For example, the school district, and the school district is operating according to another structure. And so I guess when you're talking about movement and advancing and action plans, there's always a status quo and people who have a vested interest, and how do you get beyond those little silos that you had mentioned?
Well, I think, you know, when I go back to College Tracks and some of these programs, they have gotten around the school district, because the school district and some of the issues that are going on within the school district, these nonprofits that I just mentioned, and there are many more, have worked to make a difference. My daughter went through the College Track program and made sure that she stayed on track and that her SAT scores were taken care of outside of the school system. So that's something within the city that's taking place.
And that's sort of the premise of My Brother's Keeper. It's that the school district can't do it all necessarily by itself. No parent can do it all by themselves. We need to send our children to school. And so it's building and reconnecting that network, that sort of web of a consortium of services and opportunities to ensure that there's no gaps and that each young person gets, you know, the chance that they need by getting the resources that they need.
Again, this initiative is about data. Imagine in your example with the school district. The school district has nonprofits working with its students, but imagine if the school district is not sharing data of student achievement. Imagine if the school district is not sharing what they're learning in the classroom. Those are the kinds of things that do not require resources. They require a conversation between the nonprofit, the school district, the environment, to make sure that everyone is working together towards the goal of student success for every kid.
And that's so very important, and I can imagine that there are people within one particular group might see it as a threat to what they're doing. Some of the changes you might be advocating or sitting down around the table might be for them to give up a little of their power, and you might run into some resistance.
It goes back to Melvin's comments, is that the table there's a seat at the table if you'd like to join. If you don't want to join, we're still moving forward. This is an opportunity we have a national spotlight and a national network of other cities and communities that have the same or similar kinds of issues that we have with our young people and their success. We want them to thrive. And really, one of the things that sort of came to mind in this conversation is that because of this network that sort of goes all the way across the country, you never know where you're going to land. And so if our young people somehow find themselves in Philadelphia and in need of services, they'll know how to go get them, because we will have home where they started, giving them the idea that these opportunities exist and that there's a network. Go find your network. And, you know, there's a seat at the table for anyone that wants to join.
Well, moving forward, those of you sitting at the table, this table, any other ideas that you might want to share?
Around the My Brother's Keepers
Or anything
initiative.
that's related to it in the time that we have left.
You know, I would just also like to say that the President Barack Obama and the First Lady have just thrown out some great initiatives. They also have an opportunity to reach higher. The First Lady and the President would like to see more college graduates in the United States by 2020. And for Reach Higher on College Signing Day, April 26th, we want to make sure that, they want to make sure that we are celebrating when our kids are signing up for college and posting it on the social media sites and celebrating where we've graduated from college, and just making sure that kids know that there's an opportunity and make college an important step for them. So April 26th is College Signing Day.
We'll remember that, College Signing Day. Melvin.
On the spot, I don't really have anything to add. I am definitely excited about this initiative, and as you mentioned, I'm excited about seeing some goals and progress, and will definitely do my part and hope to have lots of people came to the summit. I hope that they continue to stick with this and we work it through.
In a few seconds.
So Silicon Valley Community Foundation has partnered with the City of East Palo Alto for a very long time, but we're incredibly inspired by the leadership that has been shown here to partner with the city to move forward.
Emily, you may very well get the last words.
I'm so energized and excited to know that we are recommitting to giving each and every one of our young people their very best chance by giving them a good start and seeing them all the way through.
Well, that's a very positive, uplifting way to end the show. And it's exciting to hear that. I'll be looking for the action plan. I know you all will be excited about it. We'll follow it and see what results we get. In the meantime, I'd like to thank the four of you for being
Thank
here
you.
sharing.
Thanks for
Thank you
having
so
us.
much for having us.
And I'd like to thank our audience for watching. Until next time.